We continue now at the top of Daf Samach Beis Amud Aleph in Mesechet. This is Kesuvos Daf 62a. On the previous Amud, the Gemara asked, let's say the Talmud Chacham asks permission from his wife to go and learn Torah. So how long is he allowed to leave for? In other words, how long is he allowed to abstain from the responsibility of having relations? And so the Gemara said, well, if he asks permission from his wife, so it should be as much as they agree to. What do you mean, how long? And to that, the Gemara says, Orcha de Milsa Kama. The Gemara says, well, what's the normal amount that a person should leave in this situation? As Rashi over here says, Orcha de Milsa derech eretz shelo yisa alav chet. What's the normal thing that it shouldn't be considered a sin? Ve'afilu hu yochel lefatos. Even if he could convince her, shetiten lo reshus, that she should give permission, but it wouldn't be appropriate to ask permission to leave for too long. So what's the normal amount of time to ask for? And so the Gemara answers, Amar Rav. Rav says, Chodesh kan v'chodesh b'bayis. He can ask to leave for a month and then come back for a month. Shenemar, like the pasuk says, l'chol devar hamachlekos habav hayotzes chodesh b'chodesh l'chol chodshei hashana. It says it's talking here about the soldiers of David HaMelech. So they would come and go. 1 month they would be at home, and 1 month they would be out. And the Gemara continues, Rabbi Yochanan Amar, and Rabbi Yochanan says, Chodesh kanu shnayim beveso. Actually, the person should leave for a month, but then have 2 months at home. Shenemar, like the pasuk says, Chodesh yu balavanon shnayim chodashim beveso. That's a pasuk that's talking about the construction of the Beis HaMikdash, and it says they were home for 2 months, and they would work for 1 month. And the Gemara continues, V'Rav nami my time alo amar me'ahi. So Rav also, why doesn't he bring a proof from the binyan Beis HaMikdash? And the Gemara says, Shani binyan Beis HaMikdash, the building of the Beis HaMikdash is different. The Afshal Yedei Acherim, because that can be done. There are plenty of people available for that, and therefore it's expected that he stay home for 2 months while others do the job. Rav Yochanan, my time alo amar me'ahi, and Rav Yochanan, why didn't he say from the pasuk by the soldiers of David HaMelech? And to that the Gemara says, Shani Hasam, it's different over there, the Islay Harvacha, because there's a profit that is made, they're being paid for their work, and therefore in such a situation where there's a profit, it makes sense that the wife would say it's okay for him to go for a month and then come back for a month. It's not a problem because of the profit. And the Gemara continues with another machlokus between Rav and Rabbi Yochanan. Amar Rav, Rav says, Anocha shoveres chatzi gufo shel adam. Groaning, it breaks half the body of a person. Shenemar, like the pasuk says, V'yata ben adam he'anech b'shivron masnayim. Talks about groaning and talks about the breaking of the loins. That's like half the body. Uvemrirus te'anach. So again, you see from this pasuk that the groaning, when a person is in that kind of state of grief, so it creates a breaking of half the body, according to Rav. Rabbi Yochanan says, Af kol gufo shel adam. It breaks the entire body of the person. Shenamar, like the pasuk says, this is also pasuk in Yecheskel. This is the very next pasuk in Yecheskel. V'haya ki yomro elecha al ma'at hanenach v'yamarta el shmua kiva v'namis kol lev v'rafu kol yadayim v'chasa kol ruach v'chol birchayim telach namoyim. Pasuk over here also, it's talking about the fact that the person is struck with grief, and that the person is weak from the grief, and it talks about the fact that the entire body, we see from this pasuk that the entire body is broken by this experience. And the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan nami aksib b'shivron masnayim. But Rabbi Yochanan also doesn't, the first pasuk that we quoted, doesn't that first pasuk talk about the fact that it's masnayim, it's half the body, it's to the loins? And the Gemara says, Ahi dechi mesachla mi masnayim mesachla. That pasuk just means to say that the beginning of the breaking, it starts from the loins, but it doesn't mean just half the body, it means the entire body. V'Rav nami, and Rav also aksiv v'namas kol lev v'rafu chol yadayim v'chasa kol ruach. Also, Rav doesn't use this language that the entire body, v'chiyasa kol ruach, it talks about the entire body, the entire spirit is broken. And to that the Gemara says, Shani Shmua the Beis HaMikdash. No, it's different when you hear news that's bad about the Beis HaMikdash, the Skifa Tuva, that's very strong news, and therefore that breaks more of the person. And the Gemara continues, Ahu Yisrael v'ovet kochavim dehava kazli borcha. There was a Jew and there was an idol worshiper that were walking on the road, bahadei adodi, together. Lo imtzi ovet kochavim l'saguye bahadei Yisrael. So the non-Jew, the ovet kochavim, was not able to keep up with the Jew who was walking very quickly. So adchorei churban Beis HaMikdash. So he reminded him of the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. He figured he would start groaning, and that would slow him down. So indeed, that's what happened. The Jew slowed down, he was groaning, but still the Ovid Kochavim could not keep up with him. Amar Lei said to him, don't you say that groaning breaks half the body of the person? Why are you able to go so fast? Amar Lei said back to him, that's only true if you hear bad news that's new. But over here, this is something that's old news already. And so therefore, therefore since it's old news, therefore it doesn't affect as much. The Amri Inshi, as people say, the Malfi Tichli lo boasa. Rashi over here says, the Malfi Tichli lo boasa, Isha halamedus, l'shakil bonel over him. If a woman already is used to burying her children, she's not as frightened when one of them dies, because she's already accustomed to it. So the same thing over here, we're already accustomed to the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, so it did not slow me down that much. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Hatayolin b'chol yom, the men of leisure, they're expected to be with their wives every day. And the Gemara says, My Tayolin, what is meant by these men of leisure? Amar Rava says, B'nei Pirki, it refers to the people who go to the local Beis Medrash. Rashi over here says, B'nei Pirki Talmidim Sharab Motzei Lehem Be'iran. We're talking about students where the Rebbe's in the city. V'shonim Pirkam v'lon B'veisam. They learn their parak and they come back to their house. Those are the men of leisure that are expected to be with their wives every night. And the Gemara continues, Amar le Abaye, so Abaye said to him, to Rava, Man dichsib b'hu, about the ones which it says about them, Shav lochem mashkimei kum achrei sheves, it talks about the ones who rise early and go to sleep late. Ochle lechem hu'atzavim, they eat the sad bread, ki yitin liyadido sheina, he's going to give to his beloved sleep. V'yomer Rav Yitzchak understands this pasuk to mean as follows. Rav Yitzchak says, Eila neshosein shel talmidei chachamim, this pasuk is referring to the wives of the talmidei chachamim, shemenadado sheina meinehem, that they lose sleep, Olam hazeh, in this world, ubos l'chai olam haba, and they're going to come to olam haba. So in other words, it seems to be that their husbands stay away for a long time. V'yat amr b'nei pirka, and you're saying that these are men of leisure. No, on the contrary, these people who are learning, they're away in the morning, they're away in the evenings, they're not men of leisure. Elamar Abaya, rather Abaya says, what is meant by hatayol and kidurav? It means like what Rav said. Diyamar Rav, because Rav said, Kegon Rav Shmuel Bar Shilas, for example, this would refer to an individual like Rav Shmuel Bar Shilas, Diachal mididei, v'shasi mididei, v'gani betula da'afadnei, he eats from his own, he drinks from his own, he sleeps by the shade of his own house. In other words, he has the means to support himself. V'lo cholif pristika demalka abave, and the tax collector doesn't pass by his house. They don't realize that he has this kind of money. In other words, that's a man of leisure. That's somebody who doesn't have any worries. And the Gemara continues, Kiyasa Ravin Amar, when Ravin came, he said, Kegon mefanki demarava. It's like the pampered people of the West. That would be an example. Those wealthy, pampered people of the West, they're examples of people who are men of leisure. And Rashi over here explains, Man dechsib b'hen, the one who it's written about them, b'shvila, meaning because of them, nemar levali umnios, it's told to those who work in other professions. It says, shav lechem, it's nothing, it's vain for you, mashkimei kum achrei sheves, getting up early and staying late. Lemeleches harashus, meaning those who are doing that for something that's a rashus, that's not even a mitzvah, ochle lechem lachmam be'etzev, those are the people that eat the bread in sadness. But the person who is beloved, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives that person sleep. The one who's doing it for his honor and for the mitzvah, that person receives the olam haba. They have to wait for their husbands because the husbands are away learning by the Rebbe. Alma, we see b'shas sheina odem b'veis rabban. We see at the time of going to sleep, these individuals are still by their Rebbe. And you're saying that these people have time every single night to fulfill the mitzvah sona. And the Rashi over here continues, Rav Shmuel Bar Shilas melamed tinokos haya. He was somebody who taught children, and he made money in that fashion. And the tax collector didn't come by him. Ein shliach melech pras over al pischo lisholo avodas hamelech. They never asked him to do the work of the king. Shein ein hamelech olav, shein asher beineim. He wasn't considered wealthy in their eyes, so the king never set his eyes upon them. Mefanke demarava, the pampered of the west, b'nei Eretz Yisrael munogim b'meichel uvamishta. The people of Eretz Yisrael, they have good food, good drink. Lakachem bri. They're healthy and they're strong and they're able to fulfill this mitzvah of Ona every night. And the Gemara continues, Rabbi Avo, Rabbi Avo, he was walking in the bathhouse, and two servants, they were supporting him. Ifchis Beibani, so then the bathhouse collapsed, mituse from under him. Isramile Amuda, he found a pillar, Solik Vaskinu, he was able to climb up and he was able to bring them up as well. The point over here is to show how the people of Eretz Yisrael, they were very healthy and strong. And the Gemara continues with another similar story. Rabbi Yochanan have a kasalik bedarga. Rabbi Yochanan was going up the stairs. Have a samchile Rav Ami v'Ravasi. Rav Ami and Ravasi, they were supporting him. Ifchisa darga to say, and then the stair collapsed under him. Solik vaskinu, he was able to get himself up and bring them up as well. Amri le Rabbanan, the Rabbanan said to him, V'chi me'achar dahachi, but if you're so strong, lama le lemismeche, what do we need to support you for? Amar Lui said to them, Imkein moniach le zikna, if I have to support myself and I use all my strength now, what strength will be left for me when I become older? so therefore this is a way to preserve my strength. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, V'hapoalim shtayim b'Shabbos, the workers, their obligation for Ona is twice a week. V'atanya, the Gemara asks, but didn't we learn in a Braisa, Hapoalim achas b'Shabbos, that the workers is just once a week? Amar Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina says, Lokash is not difficult. Kan ba'osin malacha b'iran. In one case we're talking when they work in their own cities. Kan ba'osin malacha b'iracheres. In the other case we're talking when they do work in another city. Tanya Nam Yehachi, we have a Braisa that says this as well. Hapoalim shtayim b'Shabbos, the workers, it's twice a week. V'amed devar mamurim ba'osin malacha b'iran. That's only true when they work in their own city. Aval ba'osin malacha b'iracheres. But if they work in another city, achas b'Shabbos, then the requirement is just once a week. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Hachamorim achas b'Shabbos, by the donkey drivers, their responsibility, their obligation is once a week. And the Gemara says, Amar le Rabba bar Rav Chanan li Abaye. Rabba bar Rav Chanan said to Abaye, Ichfel Tana lashminon tayul upoel. Is the Tana telling us this whole rule about somebody who makes a neder, and that rule only applies to the man of leisure and the worker? Amar le said to him, Lo, no. We'll take a look at Rashi over here. Rashi says, Tana lashminon tayul upoel. Tana desasam le'il hamader es ishto. The Tana said in the Mishnah that somebody makes a neder with his wife that he's going to abstain from relations. Beis Hillel omrim Shabbos achas. As Beis Hillel says, the amount is 1 week. Once it's 1 week, if it's more than a week, the person has to divorce his wife. Ein lo lomar zos lo besafan v'lo begomel. Now that halacha Beis Hillel doesn't make any sense by a sailor, by let's say somebody who rides a camel, v'lo bechamor, somebody who's riding on a donkey, v'lo b'talmid chacham. It doesn't make a sense by a talmid chacham either. Sharei af achamor nasu achas b'Shabbos, because even the donkey driver, he only has a responsibility once a week, and so therefore, if he's abstaining for a week, uveshvil yom echad, just because an extra day that he threw in over there 1 week is just 1 day extra, yotzi vit and ksuba, he has to divorce and give a ksuba. The only obligation is every 7 days. So by all of those cases, this halacha, somebody who makes a neder that he's going to abstain from relations with his wife, he has to divorce her if it's a week. So that doesn't make sense by most of the cases in the Mishnah. And certainly somebody who's a camel driver, a sailor, certainly this halacha is not going to apply to them either, because again, their obligation is much more. It's much more than the amount of a week. The only time this halacha is going to apply is by a man of leisure who's supposed to be having relations every day, or let's say you're talking about the poel who's working in a city, so he also should b'Shabbos. He's normally accustomed to having relations twice in a week, so if he makes such a neder, then it could be a problem and have a divorce. But why would the Mishnah go out of its way to say this halacha that applies only in 2 of the cases that are listed in the Mishnah? And we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Samech Beis Amud Beis.